how this is the Ethiopian
Yes.
alphabet, right?
Yes. Ethiopian alphabet. The English translation was Amharic is this one.
Yeah.
What if I told you that the most important conversation in human history happened after the resurrection, and you've never heard a single word of it? This is not a conspiracy theory. This is not speculation. This is a 1,600-year-old manuscript, written in a language that only a handful of people on Earth can still read, guarded by monks who have never allowed outsiders to photograph it. Until now. In 2023, Ethiopian Orthodox scholars began releasing translations of passages that have been locked away in mountain monasteries since the fall of Rome. What they contain isn't just different from the Bible, you know. It completely rewrites what happened in the 40 days between when Jesus rose from the dead and when he ascended to heaven. The Western Bible gives you maybe a paragraph on this period. The Ethiopian texts give you an entire book. And what's in that book has theologians, historians, and even physicists losing their minds. Because it doesn't just talk about faith, it talks about frequencies. It talks about the architecture of reality. It talks about a war that's still happening right now, and most of humanity doesn't even know their soldiers in it. This is the story they didn't want you to know. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why they buried it. Let's start with a fact that should make you angry. The Bible you own is incomplete. Not metaphorically, not spiritually, literally incomplete. Pages are missing. Entire books were ripped out. The Protestant Bible has 66 books. The Catholic Bible has 73. The Ethiopian Orthodox Bible has 81. That's 15 more books than what most of the Western world has been reading for 500 years. And here's the thing. These aren't some medieval editions that Ethiopian monks made up. These are ancient texts. Some of them are older than the Gospel of Mark. Some of them were quoted by Jesus himself. The Book of Enoch, Jesus' brother Jude, directly quotes it in the New Testament. The Book of Jubilees, it was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, proving it existed before Christianity even started. These books were part of the original collection. They were read by the earliest Christians. So why don't you have them? Because in 393 AD, a group of bishops met at the Council of Hippo and decided what you were allowed to read. They looked at dozens of sacred texts and said, this one's in, this one's out. They created the biblical canon like a playlist, and they deleted the tracks they didn't like. But Ethiopia never got the memo. See, Ethiopia converted to Christianity in 330 AD, before the councils happened. They were already Christian when Rome was still deciding what Christianity meant. So when Rome started banning books, Ethiopia just kept reading them. They didn't remove the Book of Enoch. They didn't burn the Book of Jubilees. They kept everything. For 1,700 years, in stone churches carved into cliffsides, protected by priests who took vows of silence, these texts survived. And now, they're finally being translated. Here's something that should bother you about the standard resurrection story. According to the Book of Acts, Jesus spent 40 days on earth after rising from the dead. 40 days, that's almost 6 weeks. He appeared to his disciples. He ate with them. He taught them. But what did he teach them? Open your Bible right now. Go ahead. Look up what Jesus said during those 40 days. You'll find maybe a few sentences, a couple of scattered appearances, a conversation about fishing. That's it. You're telling me the Son of God comes back from the dead, spends 40 days preparing his followers for everything that's about to happen, and the best the Western Bible can give us is small talk. Something's missing. And the Ethiopian texts tell us exactly what. In the Ethiopian tradition, there's a text called the Mashafa Milad, the Book of the Nativity, and another called the Mashafa Kedan, the Book of the Covenant. These texts describe the 40 days in detail that will give you chills. According to these manuscripts, the risen Jesus didn't just comfort his disciples, he downloaded information into them. He taught them things that he specifically said could not be written down for the masses. He gave them what the texts call the mysteries of the kingdom. And what were these mysteries? He taught them about the two winds. According to the Ethiopian text, every human being has two spiritual forces moving through them at all times. The wind of life, which comes from the Creator and animates the soul, and the wind of error, which enters through the senses and slowly kills you from the inside. The wind of error doesn't come in through obvious sin. It comes in through the eyes when they see things they shouldn't desire. It comes through the ears when they hear gossip and slander. It comes through the mouth when it speaks without truth. And once it's in, it calcifies. It hardens around the heart. The text describes people who are physically alive but spiritually dead. It calls them walking tombs. Think about that phrase for a second. Walking tombs. People who breathe and eat and scroll through their phones, but inside they're already buried. The Ethiopian text is describing the modern world with terrifying accuracy. But here's where it gets wild. Jesus doesn't just diagnose the problem, he gives them the cure. The cure isn't what you'd expect. It's not a prayer. It's not a ritual. It's not giving money to a church. In the Ethiopian resurrection passages, Jesus teaches his disciples something that sounds more like quantum physics than theology. He tells them that the kingdom of heaven is not a place you go when you die. It's a frequency you tune into while you're alive. I need you to understand how radical this is. For 2,000 years, the Western Church has taught that heaven is somewhere else. You live your life, you follow the rules, you die, and then maybe you get to go to the good place. The whole system is built on delayed gratification. Be good now, get rewarded later. But the Ethiopian text says something completely different. It says, the kingdom is already here. It's happening right now. It's layered on top of this reality, like a radio station that you can't hear because you're tuned to the wrong channel. Jesus tells his disciples that the human body is a receiver. The heart is the antenna, and the signal it's supposed to pick up is the frequency of the Creator. But the wind of error creates static. It jams the signal. It makes you think this physical world is all there is. The resurrection wasn't just Jesus coming back from the dead. It was a demonstration. He was showing them that the physical body can be tuned so precisely to the source frequency that even death can't break the connection. And then he taught them how to do it. The text describes breathing techniques. It describes specific postures for prayer that align the spine with what it calls the pillar of light. It talks about sounds, specific sacred syllables that vibrate the body at frequencies that clear the static. This isn't religion. This is technology, spiritual technology that the Western Church either lost or deliberately hid. And the Ethiopian monks have been practicing it in secret for 1,700 years. But it gets even stranger than that. The texts describe something called the language of the birds. This isn't poetry. According to the manuscripts, there is a primal language that existed before human speech, a language that speaks directly to the soul. Jesus taught the disciples fragments of this language during the 40 days. He gave them specific sounds that could unlock states of consciousness that normal prayer couldn't reach. Medieval European alchemists spent centuries searching for this language. They called it the green language. They believed it was the key to transmutation of the human soul. What they didn't know was that it had been preserved all along in Ethiopia. The manuscripts also describe what happens at the moment of death. According to the Ethiopian resurrection passages, death is not a single event. It's a process. The soul separates in stages, and during those stages, there are windows where the soul can be guided through the transition. This is why Ethiopian Orthodox funeral rites are so elaborate. They're not just ceremonies for the living, they're instructions for the dead. The Tibetan Book of the Dead contains similar ideas. So does the Egyptian Book of the Dead. But the Ethiopian texts claim to be the original source. If that's true, the resurrection passages aren't just important for Christians. They're important for anyone who wants to understand what the ancients knew about consciousness and death. Now you need to ask the obvious question. If this is real, why would anyone hide it? The answer is simple: control. Think about what the Ethiopian text is actually saying. It's saying you don't need a priest to access God. You don't need a church. You don't need to pay tithes or confess to a bishop or follow the rules of an institution. You just need to tune your own heart to the right frequency. If you're a Roman emperor trying to control millions of people, this is the most dangerous idea in the world. You can't tax a frequency. You can't excommunicate someone from their own heart. You can't threaten someone with hell if they already know how to access heaven while they're alive. The Ethiopian resurrection passages describe Jesus specifically warning about this. He tells his disciples that men in long robes will come and use his name to build empires. They will turn the cross into a sword. They will tell people that God is far away and angry, when the truth is that God is closer than your own breath. He tells them that Rome will become Babylon, that the church will become the very thing it was supposed to fight against. And he tells them to protect the true teachings, to keep them hidden until the age when they would be needed most. The Ethiopian monks took this literally. For centuries, they've kept these texts in places that outsiders couldn't reach. Monasteries on islands in the middle of lakes, churches carved into sheer cliff faces that require ropes to climb, vaults that have never been opened by anyone outside the priesthood. Until now. In 2010, scientists were finally allowed to test one of the Ethiopian manuscripts using radiocarbon dating. The Garima Gospels, held in a monastery near the city of Adwa, were dated to between 330 and 650 AD. Let me put that in perspective. These are the oldest illustrated Christian manuscripts in the entire world, older than anything in the Vatican, older than anything in Constantinople, older than anything in the great libraries of Europe. While Rome was burning books and deciding which texts were heresy, Ethiopian monks were preserving the originals. The Garima Gospels aren't even the most important thing they have. They're just the only thing outsiders have been allowed to test. The monks say there are older texts, more sacred texts, texts that haven't seen sunlight in 1,000 years, and in the last few years, they've started talking about releasing them. Why now? Some of the monks have said publicly that the prophecies told them this would be the time, that there would be an age of global confusion, when humanity would be trapped in what the ancient texts call webs of illusion, when people would speak without voices and see without eyes. Sound familiar? The internet, social media, artificial intelligence, a world where everyone is connected, but no one is truly seeing, where information is everywhere, but truth is impossible to find. The monks believe this is the age the prophecies warned about, and they believe the texts they've been guarding are the antidote. Let me show you something that makes this even more incredible. Have you ever seen the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela? These aren't buildings that were constructed. They were carved out of solid volcanic rock from the top down. 11 churches cut directly into the earth, with details so precise that modern engineers can't explain how it was done. The local legend says that angels helped build them at night. While human workers slept, angels completed in a single night what would have taken decades. Most historians dismiss this as superstition, but some researchers who have studied the translated texts believe there might be something to it. The Ethiopian manuscripts contain references to the manipulation of stone through sound, specific frequencies that could soften rock. This sounds insane until you realize that modern laboratories have demonstrated acoustic levitation using focused sound waves. The pyramids of Egypt, the megalithic structures of Peru. None of it makes sense with the tools we're told these civilizations had. But if the Ethiopian texts contain instructions for this lost technology, suddenly the puzzle pieces start fitting together. Some scholars believe the resurrection passages themselves contain coded instructions, that the spiritual teachings about frequencies and vibrations aren't just metaphors. They're literal descriptions of how to access energies that modern science is only beginning to understand. If that's true, we're not just looking at a religious revival. We're looking at a scientific revolution, hidden for 1,700 years. But wait, there's one more piece of this puzzle that makes everything click into place. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church claims to possess the Ark of the Covenant, not a replica, not a symbolic representation, the actual Ark that Moses built, the gold-covered box that contained the stone tablets, the staff of Aaron, and the pot of manna, the most powerful object in biblical history. They say it's in a chapel in the city of Aksum, guarded by a single monk who is chosen for life and never leaves the building until he dies. No one else is allowed to see it. No photographs exist. The current guardian has been in there for decades. Western scholars have always laughed at this. They say it's impossible. The Ark was probably destroyed when Babylon sacked Jerusalem. But the Ethiopian claim has a paper trail. The Kebra Nagast, Ethiopia's national epic, describes exactly how the Ark got there. It says that King Solomon had a son with the Queen of Sheba named Menelik. When Menelik visited his father in Jerusalem, he secretly took the Ark and brought it to Ethiopia for safekeeping. This happened around 950 BC, 300 years before Babylon destroyed the temple. If the Ethiopians really did take the Ark, it would have been gone long before the Babylonians arrived. Jerusalem would have had a replica. The real one was already in Africa. And here's where the resurrection passages become even more interesting. Some of the newly translated texts describe the Ark not as a container for sacred objects, but as a technology, a device for communicating directly with the divine frequency. The gold wasn't decoration. Gold is one of the best conductors of electromagnetic energy. The specific dimensions given in Exodus match harmonic ratios found in acoustic engineering. The Ethiopian texts suggest that the Ark was a machine, a tuning device, and the resurrection teachings were the instruction manual for how to become a living version of it. Your body is the Ark. Your heart is the mercy seat. The frequency of the Creator is the voice that spoke from between the cherubim. The monks in Aksum might not just be guarding an ancient artifact. They might be guarding the proof that everything in the resurrection passages is real. And there's another layer to this that most people don't know about. The Ethiopian royal family claimed direct descent from King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. This wasn't just legend to them, it was documented genealogy. The Solomonic dynasty ruled Ethiopia from around 1270 AD until 1974, when Emperor Haile Selassie was overthrown. Haile Selassie, the man Rastafarians believe was the returned Messiah, the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah. Whether you believe the Rastafarian claims or not, the bloodline connection is fascinating. If the Ethiopian royal family descended from Solomon, they were cousins of Jesus, the house of David. This would mean Ethiopia wasn't just a random country that preserved old books. It was a safe house, a place where true teachings could be protected by family. Some oral traditions in the remote highlands speak of a stranger who came from the north, a man who healed the sick and spoke of inner peace. They don't call him Jesus, they call him the righteous teacher. Could this be a memory of someone connected to the original Christian movement? It's speculation, but in a land that claims to have both the Ark of the Covenant and the original Bible, nothing seems impossible. Recent genetic studies found Levantine DNA in Ethiopians, confirming migration from the Middle East around 3,000 years ago. The science backs up the legend. This changes everything we thought we knew about early Christianity. For 1,700 years, one small church in one remote country has been guarding texts that the rest of the Christian world was told didn't exist. These texts contain detailed instructions from a risen Jesus about how human consciousness actually works. They describe the body as a receiver. They describe reality as layered frequencies. They describe techniques for tuning the heart to access dimensions that most people don't even know are there. The Roman Church built an empire by convincing people they needed a middleman to reach God. The Ethiopian texts say the middleman was always unnecessary. The kingdom is within you. It always has been. And now, for the first time in history, these teachings are becoming available. Not because the monks decided to share them on a whim, because the prophecies told them the time had come. Because we're living in an age that matches the descriptions in their ancient warnings. An age of webs and illusions. An age where humanity has lost its connection to anything real. The texts are the medicine for a sickness we didn't even know we had. Think about the implications for a moment. If the Ethiopian Bible is the unedited version, then the version the rest of the world has been reading is censored. We've been reading the safe version, the approved version, the version that was designed to keep us dependent on institutions instead of discovering the power that was inside us all along. The Book of Enoch describes a cosmic war between forces of light and darkness. It names the fallen angels who descended to earth. It explains why the flood happened. It gives context that makes the entire biblical narrative make sense, but you weren't allowed to read it. The Book of Jubilees gives a detailed timeline of sacred history. It explains the calendar. It reveals prophecies that line up with events happening today, but you weren't allowed to read it. The resurrection passages describe exactly what Jesus taught in those 40 days. The breathing techniques, the frequency alignment, the truth about what happens when you die and how to prepare for it while you're still alive. But you weren't allowed to read it. Until now. The Ethiopian monks have a saying that has been passed down for generations. They say, "The West has the water, but we have the well." Think about what that means. The West has fragments, copies of copies, translations of translations, a Bible that has been edited by emperors and approved by politicians. Ethiopia has the source. They've been drinking from that well for 17 centuries, while the rest of the world was given the watered-down version. And now finally, they're offering a cup to everyone else. The question is whether you're thirsty enough to drink. Here's what keeps scholars up at night. If these texts are authentic, and the radiocarbon dating suggests they are, then we've been operating with incomplete information for almost 2,000 years. Our entire understanding of Christianity, of Jesus, of what it means to be human, has been based on an edited manuscript. What else has been hidden? If they hid this, what else did they bury? If the resurrection story has 40 days of missing content, what other gaps are in the narrative you've been told? What other technologies have been disguised as mythology? What other frequencies have been jammed? The monks always knew this day would come. The prophecies told them there would be a generation that needed the full truth. A generation trapped in illusions. A generation that had forgotten how to tune their hearts to the source. That generation is us. The texts are being released now because we're the ones who need them most. We're the ones living in the webs of illusion. We're the ones speaking without voices and seeing without eyes. We're the ones who have been so disconnected from the frequency of truth that we can't even recognize it when we see it. But that's about to change. What you've just heard isn't entertainment. It's an invitation. The same forces that deleted these texts from Western Bibles are still operating today. They don't want you tuned to the right frequency. They don't want you to know that the kingdom is already inside you. They don't want you to realize that the war isn't coming. It's already here, and you've been fighting without your armor. The Ethiopian resurrection passages aren't just ancient history. They're a manual for right now, for this exact moment in time, for the confusion you feel when you look at the world, for the sense that something is deeply wrong and nobody can tell you what it is. The monks knew this moment would come. They've been preparing for it since the fall of Rome. Generation after generation, they've guarded these texts, copied them by hand, protected them with their lives. And now the seal is broken. The texts are being translated. The secrets are being released. The frequency is becoming available to anyone with ears to hear. You can go back to scrolling. You can forget everything you just heard. Or you can wake up. The choice has always been yours. That's the whole point of the resurrection passages. No priest can make it for you. No church can make it for you. It's just you and the frequency. The kingdom is within you. It always has been. The Ethiopian monks have known this for 1,700 years. And now you know it too. If this changed the way you see history, hit that subscribe button. We're going deeper into the forbidden archives. There's more they don't want you to know. And we're just getting started.